Moving our way to the turret roof, we'll start here with the tank's rear ventilator. This ventilator has its waterproof cover on it that is secured with these wing nuts. This is an eastcoastarmory.com component, and on the real tank, this component here would actually only be used or be left on when the tank would be needing to ford or when the crew would not want water to enter into the vehicle, like rainwater and such. And this would be removed by removing these small wing nuts, and these small wing nuts are actually mounted to a small threaded rod that is bent and would grip onto this lip that we have molded in here. This is a solid casting, and it simply gets inserted to the top of the turret. Moving on from the air filter, this here is the tank's early production loader's hatch. The loader's hatch has all of its interior detailing. Here's your crank wheel, as well as your actual lift handles. This small bracket that comes out of the side of it is actually for the counter spring. On the interior portion of the turret, there is a counterbalance spring that would be welded to the tank's interior roof. It would have a small tang on it, and that tang is where this rod here would catch, and it would prevent the hatch from just clunking downward, and would also aid in opening the hatch from the interior due to the hatch's heavy weight. The German tanks, unlike American tanks, actually had a small key, and there's the small lock over there. On the exterior, in addition to the small key, they have a padlock mount over here to keep people from opening the hatches when they weren't authorized to. This is the interior portion of the lock mechanism, and here's a lever that also aids in turning the cams. The hatch is similar to that like you would see on a submarine or a watertight door. If we notice, it's all pre-painted. This is so when the model is going through its painting stage, this is one position or part of the vehicle I'm not going to have to worry about touching up later. A similar story also goes with the tank's commander's Copula. These are both eastcoastarmory.com components, and the Copula is the early style drum Copula. This is the early style. Later on in the production units, especially towards the end of the production run, the Copula was changed with a Copula that resembled that of the King Tiger, and that was a low profile, and the hatch would open and hinge outward. Also, as of note, the early production hatch had this mount over here that would be bolted from the interior of the turret. On the later production units, when the turret had a large steel plate welded to the roof to protect the tank better from air attack, this hatch here would actually be flush with the deck. This bolted panel here was deleted, and the hinges were sunk directly into the armor plate. Back to the Copula. As stated earlier, the German tanks all have a small locking mechanism, and there's the key here. Now, the early Copula had a very elaborate hinge mechanism in that it had a floating hinge. It hinges both in the rear and to the top of the hatch. On top of this long arm mechanism here, we have the tank's counter springs. The counter spring coil would be mounted to the side of the arm and would give the necessary resistance to aid in opening the hatch. The hatch itself is floating, and this mechanism here is a lock bar, and there's your lock tab. When the hatch opens up, it would then engage into this bar here, which would keep the turret's hatch in the open position. This is the interior portion of the hatch. We have here a small padded headrest for the tank commander, and we have the 3 hatch locks, which would lock it from the inside. This here is the small key lock that was witnessed on the exterior before. On the interior, we have all of the interior detailing on the Copula. Copula has several large... The interior has several large direct vision periscopes that have headrests and cheek rests on them for your forehead and for your cheek, or your chin, that is. The glass position or portion would be right in there, and that's how you would see out of the vehicle. Mounted directly to the sides of each of the headrests or of the periscopes is a small pad. As I mentioned earlier, that this Copula design has a very high profile and was actually a target for tank gunners to aim at to disable the vehicle, which is why this high profile turret hatch was replaced with that of the lower profile one. Moving our way down, all the small detailing has been added to the rear portion of the turret, including the rear turret lift and the small mounts for the bustle bin. Now, the Tiger 1 was originally never really designed to have a bustle bin. It was more of an afterthought. And at first, in the early batch, it was really trial and error to try to figure out where and what design for a bustle bin to use. Initially, the first bustle bin design that was implemented was the same bustle bin that we see on Panzer IIIs. It was a smaller bin and would mount to these 4 welded braces that you see here. Another initial design that was developed was the saddlebag style turret storage bin. It was 2 smaller bins that were mounted on either side of the vehicle. The straps were welded to the vehicle and riveted to the bin. A small cabinet style lock was added to the front and would lock open and would snag this little tank here and would help keep the hatch closed when the tank was in operation. These bins here on my model are fabricated all out of sheet metal and are all soldered together. They're also fully functional. I can open them up and stow equipment on the inside. Both bins have this function. In addition to the turret detailing being complete, I was also able to complete the tank's electrical systems, and all of the power switches have been added. I will now show for the first time all the models' functions running in unison. And that concludes this project update video for this 1/6 scale initial production Tiger 1. Stay tuned for more progress videos. And don't forget to check out eastcoastarmory.com for more projects and more detail upgrades. Thank you.